This is the story of Sultan Abdulhamid II, the great statesman, the majestic ruler, the Caliph of Islam. May Allah have mercy upon him. Born in the year 1842, he lived until 1918. He was the 34th Sultan of the Ottoman Empire and the 99th Caliph of the Muslims. A man unlike any other, not only in his land, but in the entire Muslim world. From his youth, Abdulhamid received both religious and worldly education, and studied under great teachers such as Sheikh Muhammad Dafir Effendi of the Shadili order and Sheikh Abu al-Huda Effendi of the Qadiri order. He combined outer knowledge with deep spiritual refinement. Even as a young man, his political intelligence and sharp memory were remarkable. He accompanied Sultan Abdulaziz on Europe. People described Abdulhamid as gentle, humble, and charming, one who could win hearts easily, yet also sharp-minded and gifted with an extraordinary memory. It was said he never forgot a face or a voice once he encountered it. The German Chancellor Bismarck himself once said, "If the intelligence of all the world were divided into 100 parts, 90 would belong to Abdulhamid, 5 to me, and the remaining 5 to all other politicians combined." But fate was severe with him. He inherited the throne of the Ottoman state during its darkest and most turbulent period, a time of decline, betrayal, and foreign plots. Yet, for 33 years, he ruled with faith, patience, on brilliance without losing a single war of consequence. When Abdulhamid ascended the throne, Britain had seized India and dominated the seas, while Russia had captured Turkestan and stood face to face with Britain over Afghanistan. Meanwhile, rebellious ministers like Midhat Pasha, who had deposed and killed Sultan Abdulaziz, sought to prove themselves by rushing the empire into war with Russia, despite Abdulhamid's warnings and his meeting with the British ambassador, who clearly stated that England would not assist the Ottomans. Midhat and his allies declared war, a war that became known as the War of 93. It ended in tragedy. The Ottoman army was betrayed by Mehmed Ali Pasha, a general of foreign blood, and the Russians reached the outskirts of Istanbul. With diplomacy and wisdom, Abdulhamid turned disaster into opportunity. He negotiated the Berlin Treaty, regaining much of what had been lost, and thus preserved the empire when all seemed doomed. He then turned inward, fortifying the Dardanelles and Istanbul, rebuilding the empire's defenses, and launching a great campaign of internal reform and industrial development. Through careful management, he reduced the empire's foreign debt from 300 million gold liras to 30 million. Abdulhamid's politics were subtle and brilliant. He skillfully balanced world powers, inviting Germany to build the Hijaz Railway from Istanbul to Medina, and using alliances to protect Muslim lands like Aqaba from British ambitions. His greatest challenge come from abroad, but from within sides. Masons and European-backed revolutionaries. Wali Suavi, a radical agitator, Free Sultan Murad V. Abdulhamid crushed the revolt with calm strength. He established one of the most advanced intelligence networks of his age, a system admired even by his enemies. His justice and mercy were legendary. When the killers of Sultan Abdulaziz were sentenced to death, Abdulhamid commuted their punishment to exile and even gave Midhat Pasha gold for his journey, despite knowing he was the man behind his uncle's murder. Then came the Armenian uprisings, incited by Russia and exploited by Western powers. Abdulhamid saw the plot clearly, a plan to divide the empire and seize access to the Mediterranean. He acted to relocate rebellious groups, yet the enemies of Islam painted him falsely as the Red Sultan. In truth, not a single execution was carried out without due justice, and many of his enemies he personally pardoned. The greatest trial came with Theodor Herzl, founder of the Zionist movement, who came twice to Istanbul offering to pay off the empire's debts in exchange for allowing Jews to settle in Palestine. Abdulhamid's reply became eternal: "I will not sell even 1 inch of this land, for it does not belong to me, it belongs to the Ummah. The blood of our ancestors has soaked this soil. Let the Jews keep their gold, and I will keep my honor." From today, there was to begin a campaign of defamation, calling him the Red Sultan, but Allah knows who was red with blood and who was pure in heart. In 1908, after decades of intrigue, the Young Turks rose against him, deceived by false promises of freedom. When the army rebelled in the 31st of March incident, Abdulhamid refused to shed Muslim blood, even though 30,000 loyal soldiers stood ready to defend him. He surrendered the throne to avoid civil war. When they came to deliver the decree of his deposition, the Sultan looked upon them and said, "You are Muslims, and you have the right to choose or reject me, but why is there a Jew among you?" Then, with calm faith, he recited, "That is the decree of the Almighty, the All-Knowing." He was exiled to Salonika, confined in the house of a wealthy Jewish family, and deprived even of food for days. His palaces were looted, his wealth stolen under the guise of national property, yet in his silence, his dignity never left him. When they later asked his advice during the First World War, he opened a world map and said, "Did you not see that England rules half the world, while Germany has none? How could you go to war against the English beside the Germans? I used the Germans to counter England, not to destroy us alongside them." They left his presence in tears, whispering, "We did not know the value of this Sultan. What a grave mistake we made." He passed away in February 1918 after a lifetime of struggle, wisdom, and faith. When the news spread, the people wept bitterly. Even his former enemies recited verses of regret, realizing too late the greatness they had betrayed. The philosopher Sultan Abdulhamid II forgives. "You were right, and we were blind." Abdulhamid II was the first martyr of Palestine, the last true Caliph who held the Ummah together with insight, faith, and courage. He established schools, railways, hospitals, and universities across the Muslim world. He sent scholars to China and Japan to spread Islam, and his Hijaz railway was funded entirely by donations from Muslims across the globe, a symbol of unity that still inspires hearts today. He was a man of deep devotion. It is said he never signed a document without ablution, even in the middle of the night. Once, when a messenger knocked on his door with an urgent matter, the Sultan delayed only to make wudu, saying, "I cannot sign any paper concerning the Ummah without being in a state of purity." Such was his taqwa, his mercy, and his leadership. He lived for his people, prayed for them in secret, and died with their love in his heart. May Allah have mercy on Sultan Abdulhamid II, the shadow of Allah on earth, the guardian of the Ummah, and the last lion of the Caliphate.